As we said, we're from the University of Strathclyde. We have a good contingent up at the back lurking. So Michael Hearn, myself, Michael Hughes and Susie, and we have our new sport analyst, who's just joined us, Terry. And we are basically the Moodle development team, support team for the University of Strathclyde. We basically build our version of Moodle called MyPlace. This one, we're going to talk about a couple of interesting things around students' expectations, the way that we manage some of the message we give to our students and to staff. And this came out of a conversation a number of years ago about how we manage the expectations of our students, about what they want to do, what they need to do for their modules. But it also, with that conversation about what students are expected to be told, who's responsible for telling them? Where does that lie? How do we make that process easier in that life cycle? And again, we have things about what's the net effect when we start doing this stuff. So these are the areas we're going to look at. Most people, I suspect, if you go to your university, will find something that says something like that in your policies. This is our university policy, one of them, in terms of saying, right, we tell all these things in these really dense policy documents. We're going to put out a couple of example ones. This is, for example, this is told to the students about what they must be aware of. Module coordinators are told you are responsible for this pile of stuff. And there are specific bits in there, so details of assessments, starts of a class, being transparent, all these things which are great to say, but how do you turn that into actual actionable things that people can do? And then we talk about the responsibilities of staff. How do they know what they are actually responsible for? If you've been a teacher for years, you might know that implicitly. You're a new TA, you pick up your class for the first time, you're looking at the stuff that's been left before. How do you know what you're meant to do? And again, it's these keywords that we've trying to pick out in terms of published assessment criteria, engaging dialogue, all these sort of action words that are generally variably done. Some people are really good, some people aren't. And then finally, the students, understanding the nature of what they're being asked to do in terms of where they have to go, how to submit work, making sure it's the right format, how do they report issues when they are doing their work? If they're having problems, that's just as important as getting the work in. If they can't get the work in on time, how do we get them to know the processes that they are needing to follow? So a couple of years ago, we went through a whole process at our university at a policy level, and that's specifically looking around extension requests. And interestingly, the first version of the policy got published, and it didn't work. It was awful because the technology wasn't there to support it. So we had an opportunity to engage with that whole process in terms of our extension request policy. How do we actually make sure what we expect the students to do in that particular area is dovetailed into the technology and into MyPlace? So we created an assessment and feedback policy tool with our version of a Moodle. And from a staff perspective, this mostly engages with them doing assignments. That's 90% of our students' interaction. They are submitting work. So it's the best place for us to try and do an intervention. So the first thing we wanted to do is we've done this intervention on the assignment activity form. When a member of staff is creating an assignment, they get a big section that says, here's the policy, you go and read it. But what we've tried to do is we've taken key bits of action from that policy and turned it into simple settings that we get. They're expected to tell the students when their feedback is returned to. They just have to now select an item and it will put that on the form in the right place. How do you know who's responsible for it? Well, we give them a drop-down list that says, who are the people in the course who could be responsible for your course? Choose the right person. And then finally, we've got a marking criteria. We want to tell the students how the work's going to be marked. So we put that as a form there. Now, this may replicate things where people are using advanced marking criteria in Moodle, which is a really good way to do it. Definitely recommend using it. That fulfills the disclosure part of it well. Most people aren't using it. They're using simple directed grading. Their marking criteria is a piece of text that they follow on a Word document. So this gives them that opportunity to put that in, and the students can see how their work will be assessed. And it can also be used to disclose what sort of feedback will you get from the member of staff. And it's there on the activity, and it's tailored to every single activity. So if a member of staff decides they want to change that, they're not going through a big policy document. They're not going into a Word document that they have to change. They can go into the activity and say, these are the rules that apply for this particular activity. So that's the form. So those bits of the form then come up, and if you imagine this being on the standard Moodle assignment page, we now inject below the standard Moodle instructions for the assignment some simple structural administrative information. These are the things that we can ask a question and just display dead easily. And then we present that thing all injected onto that front page. So when the student sees the assignment, it's there. It's updated whenever the member of staff needs to do it, and it's presented to the students. And that ticks so many of the boxes in terms of giving that disclosure of what the students expected to do. On top of that, we also look at extension requests, late submission policies. Again, these now become policies that the university has 30-page documents about. But we wanted to put those into Moodle so they reflected the university's business decisions where they could see it. And of course, with universities, the standard word is should. So the option is university policy says you can take extensions, you can take late submissions, but we give them an opt-out on the form. So again, they can mix and match that within their assignment. It may be something they're just gathering some information in as a piece of an activity to gather it. It's not assessed, so maybe not need all that sort of happening. And so we go through it, and what we've done is we've tweaked the validation to support these processes. So, for example, most people don't fill out grade to pass. It turns out if you want to do late penalties, you need to know what the student actually needs to get, so you know what you can penalise at what level. So again, we've gone through, we've taken that stuff so that when they fill out the form, they can't get it wrong. We're trying to put a mechanism where it guides them through filling all the right bits and pieces out. So once they provide that information, we're going to go through extensions first. Once it's turned on, the students, when they are doing the assignment, get a dead simple box that says request extension. Now, this has been really good in terms of not putting it into a third-party system. Students don't need to have a URL that they remember to go find it. We had at one point, I think, 4 different extension request systems for our faculties. And then lots of others with departments doing it by you email the course administrator, you do it like this is now implemented in our MyPlace, and it is university policy that you now apply through MyPlace. The students, when they do that, they get a form. It will start off with the details of the assignment. Again, trying to give them all that information nice and clearly when they are doing the thing that's important to them about when they're expected to do it. And then we have departmental and university guidance about extension requests, what's valid, what's not valid. That is configurable down to a department. So a department can say, actually, we have different rules for different things, or we have a set of modules within a Moodle category. We can say that these are different, and we can give you that information, and the students can see it right there on the form when they do it. And then after that, it's a dead simple form. They give us a reason. There's a standard drop-down reasons, medical conditions, serious illness. COVID was on there, so we had a little incident with COVID a while back. And then they provide us with a proposed date. Again, part of the policy says the university isn't specifying how long you need. If you only need 2 days, you can ask for 2 days. If you need 3 weeks, you can ask for 3 weeks. They get to propose that. That information is captured on this form, but they can give us additional information into that form about what might be happening. That goes on to the extension request. Whilst they are looking at their assignment, that now sits there as an open request. They can see the status of it. They can see if it's been actioned, reviewed, or anything. And if they want, they say, I don't need that, they can cancel it straight off their assignment. Once that gets decided, that decision will change to resolve. It will tell them the date of their extension that's been granted. It will automatically set that extension date on their Moodle assignment. So the member of staff now just gets a form that looks like the close and they just make a decision about the date of whether they're accepted or not. And that's it. That decision then gets communicated to the students. It's displayed on their assignment. It's sent to them by email. It's displayed on their front page of MyPlace in our notices tool, and it also appears in the mobile app. So all the students about say, and then receive that, we have 4 places that we tell you that you got your extension. So that is basically the form that the staff see. Again, it summarizes all the information that the students get. This particular one, it's in read mode because I submitted it, and this is a process. I can't grant my own extensions. Funny enough, people have tried that. But again, there's some information there. It says when the request was made, it was requested how far after or before the due date. So again, members of staff can see, is there something where the student is doing it retrospectively? Are they trying to cover something that they should have done beforehand? They can intervene in that and they can get that information. There's a bit other metadata allowing the staff to make good decisions. How many extensions have they made across other classes? When you spent ages to kind of go, what should they see? Which interview? You work for the university. If you're allowed to make a decision about an extension, you should see that students' extensions across the university. You're not making that decision in isolation. The policy says extensions are not decided in isolation. So we present that there to them. And then as member staff, the last two options, decision, the actual date you want to grant it. You can just say, yes, take the date the students get, it's reasonable. If they want to say, actually, this student really needs 3 more weeks, they can have 3 more weeks. As a member of staff, you can just set that. And that's the form the staff go through in terms of making that decision. That's extension requests. Amazing, we saw thousands of extension requests come through this way. We're interested in commonly go work out, is that because we've made the process easier? Or is that because the students are now post-COVID actually much more particular about asking for requests? We're also seeing things, there's been different things that have come out of the way that staff have interpreted the extension policy. They're going, okay, if it's up to 7 days, we'll just automatically say yes. So again, we're looking at how that process becomes more optimized for the staff, where they need to make decisions, where they can get out of making the decision. The other part we added onto this was, if you're asking for extensions, we want to know if their students are late for their extensions or their regular submissions. So we've added a late submission, an automated late penalty system into our Moodle. So this assignment was overdue by 21 days. I was really diligent for my work. And straight out the bat, it's going to tell me at this moment in time, you may get some penalties. I can drill down into that information right now, and I will tell me exactly what scope of penalties I've got. These are all defined in our university policy. Michael and Hannah at the back spent ages working out how do we encode this into a calculator that can actually tell you what it's in. And we went through the whole discussion about, is that contiguous days? Does it take into weekends? Does it take into what other things? There were loads of other things that we work with, working days and holidays and things like that. And we had to go back to the policy writer and say, no, you can't just say 7 days. You need to be a bit more specific. And this is what we've come up with. You know, if you are 1 day late, it's 10%. It goes up. Once you get past 7 days, you're automatically 100% penalized in there.
Is your marking scale percentage?
Yes, we do have an A, B. Yes, broadly speaking, this only does work with percentage marking scales for it, or percentage marking. That is most people's habit at the minute. There are some people which are using rubrics, but a lot of them, they do translate into just a numeric value. We have some people who are using scales, and we can't do that with a scale because it's a discrete value and things like that. So again, that's the options that come up here are dependent on the grade type that you choose on the form. So if you can't do something where we can calculate the penalty that's applied to it, then it won't be doing it. So again, once you get that information before you've even submitted. So if you're already late, you know if you're going to get penalized. If you're not late, you get that you get to see the schedule and you get to see the date. So you can strategically make a decision about whether you want to be late or not. Once a student submits an actual grade, we capture the date that they submitted. We capture what the sort of marking setup was at the time, so we can calculate it even if it changes after the fact. And we will then work out the actual penalty that the student attracts. So in this particular case, even though I was graded 100% because I'm a really diligent student and know all my stuff, I was 21 days late. I'm instantly 100 marks penalized for this submission. And you can see on the left-hand side, we have what we call our sort of performance grade. That's what the work was worth. It's marked against the criteria. And then you see as it goes right until the other side of that final grade is now 0 out of 100 because it's applied that administrative correction to that. Within that, staff and students in that late submissions, and you see there's 2 sections for late submissions. The first late submissions gives you the breakdown of what the students were told when they were submitting their work. The other one is what is actually applied once they were graded. And then you click into that, into the details, we actually give you a breakdown saying exactly, this is what happened. This is how the penalty has been calculated out to do that, to give an explanation. And we provide that information into the student, and it feeds it into the gradebook. And once that comes, you can see that we've got a late penalty applied in the gradebook. Now we are using basically the Moodle override grades function for this. So it means that it's non-destructive. Somebody can go back in and actually take that penalty off if they've got a legitimate reason to not be penalised. If they can come back and say, actually, I don't want to do that. We also have a mechanism. The policy says that for students, you can be up to 4 hours late on your submission date. And if you tell us that you had a problem within that 4-hour window, you will not get penalised, but you have to tell it. So, for example, if you couldn't get to a computer and you submitted it 20 minutes after the fact, there's an option, and they will basically note that exception, but unset the penalty for the grade. And that's our late submission functionality that we've added into Whiteplace. Now, I did say this was going to segue into AI, which is going to be a bit weird, but part of the problem that we have started to have a discussion on with AI goes back to that managing expectation. What are we telling students they're allowed to do with AI? How do we know that they've understood it? And how do we actually, just verify that information? At the University of Strathclyde, these have been our principles that we've been formulating over the last couple of months about the principles for teaching and learning with AI. And one of them is really about the transparency and standards. So from that, we have now got a 4-tier set of uses of AI that are acceptable in terms of what we describe to students when they are using tools. It's not permitted at all. Just if you use AI, you get caught, you're going to get penalised. Right through to actually you cannot do this task without using some form of AI. Either it'll be up to you to choose it as part of the task, or it'll be something that you are told this is what you should be using to fulfill the rules. Which is great, because this is on a website which it takes me 15 minutes to find every time I want to look this up. Students can't find it either. So what we are looking at is how do we take that information about setting AI and look at the submission statements, and what we've done with the assessment feedback form. So we are looking at, can we extend that form and say, actually, if you're setting a task here, what are the AI rules that you want the students to know about? And we can look at injecting that onto that page of information for the students, and they can say, everything's free, do what you like. At the tail end of that, we want to try and look at, can we get some way to get students to assert that they follow the rules? And we already asked them this submission statement for every single piece of work that they do when they actually click submit. We are looking at whether we can do that bookending of those things in terms of asking them for, yes, I followed the rules. So when they come back, if there's an appeal, that's the biggest problem we're looking at with our academic honesty colleagues. It's like, if there's an appeal, did we tell the students? Did they actually assert that they understood the rules of the game? So we're looking at bringing that back in that. That's the amount of AI that we're going to talk about. And that it's nothing to do with AI being generative. It's just how do we use AI? How do we talk about the rules that we use in it? And this discussion that we're having, anybody else who's had that conversation and thoughts about it, we'd love to get your ideas, insight of what happens in setting those terms and things like that. We'll segue into the other bit. Moodle AI is here. How many people have played with it? Right, you don't count and you don't count. So since the last time I stood up here, where Moodle were actually talking about the AI subsystem, it is now in Moodle 4.5. It's released code now. They have released basically the subsystem, text and image generation, and summarizing. And we'll very quickly segue through these just so everybody knows what's happening. They build their AI subsystem providers. This means if you have an AI provider, you can, as long as it's OpenAI or OpenAI on Azure, you can now create a Moodle provider which will talk to that LLM in your Moodle server. You basically jump into your AI providers, and at the minute you can have exactly 2 AIs for your whole Moodle server, one in each. But you can go in there, set it up, and it will start working very simply. The roadmap has this expanding to ideally supporting lots of instances. So we've had conversations with lots of people about actually we may need a specialist AI for that particular course or things like that, or we need to budget different things. So we want a different key used by that area so we can cover the costs differently.
Just a question.
Yeah.
Do these pay for services?
That's a yes or no answer. The OpenAI provider will work with any AI backend that follows their API. So you can run OLAMA. They are looking at an OLAMA provider that's specifically tailored for that. So you could run a local hosted AI model and hook it up to that. And I know they've got a list of other providers to go in there at the minute. But at the minute, even with those other providers, it would be one instance of those things in there. So hopefully that's going to expand out in terms of actually be a lot more versatile in terms of doing it. But they've gone with the big ones because, broadly speaking, those two APIs are similar. Dead easy to configure. When you go in, you have these standard keys to set up. And again, at the bottom, there's a couple of actions which will be defined by the provider about what they can do. So, for example, generate text, generate image, and summarize. You can turn these on and off, and they're not going to be there for necessarily for everybody. You may not be wanting to offer that to everybody. This applies to your whole server. The second part is placements. This is where your opportunity for an AI is presented, and there are two at the moment. One is the course assistance placement, and the other one is in the active text editor. And again, you can turn these on and off for there. The final thing is there are the actual actions that you can do. Now, this is actually probably more interested in people a bit more techie. This is actually where their API starts having a place where we can start building AI actions that do things. At the minute, the action is made available in a placement. So those summary text actions will appear where you've said this placement should appear in it. Nicely, just as for everybody who's maybe looking at it, people who are concerned about what prompts those AIs get, they can be tweaked already out of the box. It's a little bit obscure, but that's there if you want to say you need to put extra rules around what in one of these actions actually does. So for the text and image generation, you'll find this in the Atto editor now. There's a funky little starry button, and you'll get for the placements. If you've turned off one of them, you'll not see them in there. And you get a generate text option. First time you use it, you will go through this AI usage policy. Broadly speaking, it's boilerplate in there, but it's there for that disclosure about what's going to happen with your data. And that appears to each user. So it's not like a site-wide thing. Each user gets that disclosure about what's happening. And in this case, for generating text out of the thing, you get your prompt, and then you get your results in there. That work, you get these level of error messages at the minute if things don't work, just so you know. But we worked it out eventually. And what you get is it will give you that text, and then if you say okay, it will place it into the editor at the point where you invoke your AI action. That's the right word. On the other side, the course placement area is where end users start seeing AI coming into it. What they've done is they've added a little shim effectively in the activity header. At the minute, the only button in there is summarize. And this effectively does exactly what it says in the tin. It will take the data that's on the page and it will run it through the AI and turn it into a piece of text on the sidebar. That's what the students get as an AI offering at the minute from Moodle. That raises really interesting questions. There's no controls yet in terms of granularity, or can I say, don't let the students summarize this text because you want them to do the work themselves? That's on the roadmap, hopefully. But there's an item that says it's on the roadmap, whether it gets delivered, that's up to you. But again, that's the area, that's split there. As more placements and more actions become available, you'll see more things hopefully coming into Moodle from that sort of thing. So, quick summary. 2 providers, 1 provider per instance per server, summarization. I'm not doing summarization actually is that helpful because it's no better than copy and paste into ChatGPT already. And there's no protections. It's not adding anything to do it. And I think there's a really interesting question pedagogically about summarization, how that works in terms of equity, but also justice affordance as a tool. If we turn it off in our tools, they're just going to find ways to do it anyway. The staff side is more what is becoming available in the Atto editor. That's really just text generation and image generation. So it's really adding a garnish to things. It doesn't necessarily help you with the actual thought process of what you need to teach or what you want to get across. But it may be, again, as teachers, that's, I think, something to go and play with. How does that help you deliver the actual content or help you get your message across in there? There are other tools that are doing that arguably better. Things like Teachermatic have a much broader swathe of activities, but they're not integrated into Moodle yet. So again, it'll be interesting to see how that develops. And there are tools like Plato, which asserts it takes your entire Moodle course and gives you a conversational chat interface to it, which is interesting. There's a whole pile of other resources in there. If you want to go and look at Moodle's documentation out the subsystem, it's up there. Learning 8 Tools AI Playground, one of the Moodle communities, are basically creating a Docker repository where it actually pulls together a whole load of Moodle AI tools that you can basically run up, turn on, configure. There's other AI managers that have been implemented. We've written one. The Mebus guys have written one. It's really interesting. It's really full featured actually in terms of doing lots of different types of actions, but it's quite tightly coupled to a lot of their experience. But it's definitely worth having a play with and look at that just to give you a sense of what the different AI placements could be leveraged in a Moodle site. AI text question type, Catalysism, that's Marcus Green. That is literally an AI essay question where it will go off and try and give the students feedback on their essay from an AI. Definitely worth a play with it. And go talk to Jasmine if you want to finish with that. And the other one, the other thing, that Plato tool that I told you about is doing some stuff where it's trying to do a conversational interface onto Moodle course. We're doing that as well. We've got a docker image which actually allows you to kind of go, tell me about this course, and actually have a conversation interface with it. And we are exploring what does that actually, is that actually useful for students to be able to interact with the course that way? What are the rules in terms of, as an academic, I don't want you to be able to ask that question or see that results. So we started to get that becoming up and available for people to play with. And that is a